Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jamie, so I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. This very special episode of Permission to Thrive. I have with me my dear friend, soul psychology coach, Joe Argazzi, whom I'm hoping that you all are getting to know as deeply as I have the privilege and honor of knowing you, Joe. And for those of you listening and you've been loyal listeners or you're just getting to know Joe, my intention is to introduce you all to all of my soul care coaches and just love your wisdom, Joe. And we decided to come back together on this episode because Joe was so gracious to interview me for episode 52 on my 1-year anniversary of Permission to Thrive. My other dear friend, Julia Pador, had interviewed me for episode 1. So for anybody just interested, you can go back to episode 1, episode 52, and you can hear me getting interviewed. And then I received so many DMs and emails and comments, and I was surprised at how many questions came and how much gratitude there was. And it is true that we learn so much when one of us is willing to be vulnerable and transparent and open our lives up. So we decided to come back together. Joe is going to interview me again, ask me some more personal questions. Not because I'm here sharing all my business, but in the hopes that in my willingness to share very vulnerably and transparently and openly about some of the more personal sides of my life that maybe you all don't get a peek into all the time, that it will assist you. So the whole intention here is to please use my sharing and let it speak to the different areas of your life, so that you have many takeaways and you get to use my experience or something that I'm sharing, really use it for your own good, your own growth, your own transformation, make your life an enriched, thriving life. That is our intention today. So I said to Joe again, there's nothing off limits, and we decided I'm just going to be here answering your questions, and hopefully it will be of service to you all and you will have many takeaways. So sit back and relax and receive. Turn it over to you, Joe.
Well, alrighty then. This is pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. Thanks for having me come back and spend time with you and just hang out and do our thing. So grateful. And one of the reasons I think you're so successful as a teacher and your soul care and the soul care certification is because you're so relatable. You are transparent. You're honest with your process. And it's like you're one of all of us, right? You're just right there alongside, maybe a little more wisdom, a little more experience from time to time, but you're always available and share from the heart. And that's why people, I think, resonate so strongly because of that transparency and that willingness and that humility. And of course, combined with your wisdom. And so I just, very grateful. So I have some questions, but I want to go back. You had said you'd received from our first interview a lot of emails and questions. Are there any, maybe one or two that stood out to you that you would like to answer or share here?
I think the 3 biggest areas were around my relationship with Will and has it always been easy? That people hear that I'm so close to him and we have a very close and healthy relationship. Was it always that easy? Give me a peek behind, like, how is it that you have created that? I got a lot of questions about my marriage because I have been in a very long-term relationship, 26
Hmm.
years. And then just questions about my spiritual practice, like, do you meditate? People know I meditate because I talk about meditation, but like, how is it? You meditate twice a day. And not only meditation, but just spiritual practice in general. So I don't know, does anything,
Yeah, actually,
you know
yeah,
me in all of those areas. So
yeah. What's so great, or those are some of the questions I was going to ask you. So people are already wanting to know. So let's start there. Let's start with your practice. What does your daily practice look like? What did it look like? How has it changed?
yeah, so I think in a crazy way, I've always had a spiritual practice, as I've shared many times on this podcast. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family,
Hmm.
but the thing about being raised with so much trauma and just dysfunction around me was that I was just one of those kids that was always seeking the light and
Hmm.
hungry for where is the health in this dysfunction. And I was always craving and yearning to find the solutions and the health. And I felt very alone and lonely growing up and not enough and
Hmm.
separate and many things that I've shared many times. But I was always seeking the light, the solutions, the way through, the what it could be, the possibilities, the potentiality. And so when I was 16 is when I first learned to meditate. I found transcendental meditation, and it was a lifeline to me during a very dark time in life. I was very
Hmm.
lost when I was 16 and not feeling good about myself. And so my spiritual practice, I would say, was my best friend. And I would say to this day, all these years later, and I can say that now I feel very fulfilled from the inside out. I have a very thriving life, that I live a very purposeful life full of meaning and all the things. And
Yeah.
I would say, though, that my spiritual practice is my best friend. What does it look like every day? I'm up 5:30. I'm not a morning person, just saying, not a
Hmm.
morning person to this day, but I do. I wake up, I meditate for at least 40, 50 minutes. I'm always reading something. You asked last time, what was I reading? Oh, I should
Yeah.
have brought my books. I'm onto another set of books now. I'm in the midst right now of this book called The 30-Day Mental Diet. I'm
Oh.
on day 6. So I'm typically meditate and then I'm doing some kind of spiritual reading. I'm always immersing myself with music. I think music
Hmm.
is so healing. And just the other day, William said to me, my son said to me, Mom, you really need to play the piano more because I listen to your CD and all my friends listen to your CDs and your music, which was so interesting to hear from my son saying that.
Wow.
So I like to listen to music, I like to play, I need to be outside in nature. Not a day goes by that I don't, even if it's just walk around the block in my neighborhood, I just need to be under the trees and see the grass and the sky. And I'm lucky enough to live in LA, so it's usually blue skies and
Yeah. Yeah.
green trees. But I think that my spiritual practice, to just go a little bit deeper,
Please. Yeah.
has really been about communing. I always have the saying, the Albert Einstein, the most important decision we can make in our lifetime is if we really believe that we live in a benevolent universe. But to really commune, like have a feeling inside of myself.
That's so great that you're saying. I was going to ask you, what does it feel like? What's the experience of the meditation when you first started and you felt so alone and you felt unworthy? I was curious as to how that meditation helped you work through those feelings and change and transform some of those feelings. And you're speaking to it now about it being experiential and communing, as if I heard you correctly, like with nature. So please go on. This is exactly where I wanted to go with you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can relate to this or not, and I hope that everyone listening can relate because it's not really, yes, we start with what the practice looks like because it is helpful to have a
Right.
structured practice.
Correct.
But even if you don't, and you use something like you listen to music and sing that piece of music to yourself, I was always craving the feeling inside of myself of what does it really feel like to know that there's a presence that's greater and larger than me, and does it actually really love me? Am I actually really loved? Am I actually really lovable? Am I actually really enough? And what is that relationship like with a presence that is invisible, but yet it's so real because I'm not breathing my own breath. I'm not beating my own heartbeat. I didn't make these trees. I have nothing to do with the birds in the sky. I didn't create any of this. And yet I find that so many clients and students that come to me, myself included, we aren't taught and modeled that feeling that, oh, honey, you're so worthy, you're so enough, who you are matters, your life is important. We hear all those words.
Right, right.
I was always longing for the feeling of it.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that what's really important is not necessarily the form of the meditation. The consistency is important, but it's the intention behind. So if you're just doing a sitting meditation, or you're in nature, or you're listening to music, your intention is to feel a resonance within, not just intellectually, but within your body, a connectedness with yourself or with something greater of which you're a part of. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. And I think, again, I don't know about you and everyone listening, but anybody that's known me for 5 minutes or taken one of my courses, you know that
Yeah,
I'm obsessed with the inner child.
yes.
So, my lifeline to that feeling is that there is a little girl within me, and there
Mm,
is a little boy within you, and
yeah.
there is a young child within each one of us that is longing to know what you, as the adult individual, is longing to know. There's a little real person within you that at one point knew exactly who you are. I always say it's like an Oreo cookie when you're born onto this planet and when you're getting ready to leave this planet. You have those epiphanal awarenesses. When you're getting ready to leave this planet, you're
Mm,
going to realize, oh my God, I see it all. And that middle area of the Oreo cookie, while we're living in the life, I'm always hungry to feel that feeling of what someone has. If you've been fortunate enough to be with someone when they're passing on, or
mm,
you will know yourself one day you're going to be passing on, or if you've been fortunate enough to be with a newborn, or you can imagine yourself at one point you were a newborn, that's when we are the closest to knowing who we are because we feel it. We're at one with it. We're experiencing it that. And that's what I'm seeking to do every day of my life through my meditation practice, my spiritual practice, through these conversations, through this podcast episode. Any which way I slice it, I'm seeking for myself and to give it away that you too can have this feeling. And that's what we're all yearning for. We're all yearning to go through this lifetime, but with the remembrance of who we are. And so that's why my lifeline is always that younger part in me that just deserves to be reassured and soothed. Most often, that place within us can feel orphaned. And so
yeah.
I'm always seeking to adopt the places inside of me that feel orphaned and to remind them you're worthy. So that might not sound like a spiritual practice to someone. And so I'm appreciating what you're saying. It's not so much the form, it's the way that you can give yourself an experience so that you feel that feeling inside. Oh, I am worthy. I am here for a reason. I am more than enough. I am abundant. I am creative. I am inspired, and then I can light up the way in front of me and light up my relationships with others. And
Correct. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's that connection with
Hmm.
self and then connection with life in whatever form it takes. I mean, I know for me, that's my intention in my meditation practice, and it takes many different forms, but at the heart, the center, there's always an intention to feel that expansiveness, to feel that greater sense of peace and love, which is actually ineffable because it's everything, but to feel my interconnection with all of it. And nature, sometimes I know when I'm sitting at a beautiful sunset or walking through the woods, it's almost like it's meditating me.
Mm,
I'm just present. You know, you were speaking to that being present. And you said something else that was really cool and I think really important. When we have that experience, and then part two is the desire to be of service and give it away and share it with another human being.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
being of service with that, which keeps us connected, it also keeps us in the conversation of, of that. So that part of that was
Exactly.
really important.
It keeps us in the energy. And the other thing that I want to say is I'm very aware
Mm.
that in trying to articulate this, if
Yeah.
I was someone listening to me right now, I might be saying, well, I don't feel that. I don't feel that. And I think that for any of you listening and you're not feeling that, that also is my obsession, is that I really want to assist somebody to move on that bridge from not feeling it to feeling it. And so I think as you're asking me this and I'm hearing myself articulate it, a big piece that I've left out is, and you asked me about it, how do you go from when you're feeling lonely and in
Yes.
pain and you're feeling separate and you're like, oh, that sounds great what Suzi Lula and Joe Argazzi are saying. It sounds great, but
Or
I
you're
don't feel
depressed, or
that.
you're feeling scared and fearful.
Yes. And so I think, again, that's also why I'm probably very obsessed with the inner child, because the places inside of us that feel in pain, that feel separate, that may be suffering, that feel in the darkness. For a long time of my life, I felt I was separate.
Yes.
Oh, this was possible for everybody else, but it wasn't possible for me.
Right.
And so, for anyone listening who's having that feeling, maybe not overall in your life, but maybe with one of your children, maybe in your marriage, maybe with your finance, and you're just feeling dark, I think that the bridge is learning how to mother the orphaned places inside of you, learning how to mother the messy places, the painful places, the shameful places, the places that you've been taught to put in a closet and hide, that are unacceptable, that you wouldn't put on your social media reel,
Yeah.
that you don't even really talk to your best friend about. But the place that when you sit still, this is why it's very challenging often for people to learn how to meditate. Because often when we finally sit down to be still to meditate, all of the pain comes rushing up that we've been taught to drink away, purchase away, get busy away, achieve away. We've been
Clean
taught
away.
clean away. Yeah, we've been taught externalize. God forbid, don't sit down with your own pain. And so when people start and they come to me and they want to learn a meditation practice, it can be often very challenging because when you finally sit down, all of that which has been unprocessed and in the dark and unmet needs and unfulfilled needs and unprocessed trauma, you're sitting still. You're not purchasing something. You're not drinking alcohol. You're sitting with it and it comes barreling forward. And so this practice of remothering ourselves. And I think it's so essential because on our planet Earth right now, there's no accident that I call it remothering. Yes, you could call it refathering also. We've had a toxic patriarchy. Yes, that is true. But we don't live in a culture that has honored. We haven't lived for generations in a culture that honors the feminine.
Yeah.
And so we've lost what the feminine feels like. And so when we go to sit down to meditate, for instance, we don't know how to then be a loving presence for the places inside of us that are in pain. And that's what gets in the way of 99% of people's meditation practice, because they don't know how to be with the parts that are in pain. And so they abort the meditation practice because it can feel challenging to simply sit. And that's why a lot of my work is around learning to hear that language and feel that feeling. And I think when you ask me about personally about my meditation practice, I think it's because I felt very unmothered, if that's a word.
Yeah.
I didn't have that innate feeling of mothering myself.
So
I had to
can
learn
you
that.
take us through that process? Something that you're either working on or had worked on that was painful that came up while you were sitting, and
Yeah.
what you did with that, and then what the experience was like afterwards.
Yeah. So I'll take you through something that I'm going through right now in my life. So I've worked on and, as you know, practiced in my life my journey with knowing that I am enough. And often it is specifically around my relationship with finance and and seeking to feel financial security, what
Mm,
someone else would call, oh, I feel financially secure. Just like, oh, I feel secure with my breath today.
mhm,
I don't think my breath is going to run out. I'm not really preoccupied with it. I just breathe in, I just breathe out. And so on this journey, sorry, not sorry, Jamie, got to share about my husband. I often project onto him that I would feel more financially secure if he provided more to me. So I
mm,
look to him to be my financial source because I feel already insecure in that area. So, what does this have to do with meditation? So, there's two different lanes here. One is the lane of learning to process that which is an unmet need of mine from childhood, and the other is meditation. So when I say that often people sit down, so often then when I sit down to meditate in this particular chapter of my life, I will close my eyes and this barrage of energy will come up. Sometimes it's tears, sometimes it's emotion. Often it's pain. Sometimes it feels like loss and
mm,
grief of
mm,
what I didn't receive.
mm,
Often I'm aware that I'm searching basically for a mother to mother me and say, "Oh, honey, it's going to be okay. You're provided for, just like with your oxygen and the air that you breathe and the beating of your heart, just like that. That's how it works with finance. That is not how my experience was as a child, but I do know that that is how it works. So when I sit down to meditate, often this energy of lack, of longing, it comes up sometimes in the form of finance, but it's
mhm,
longing for a mother
mm,
is the
mm,
longing. So when you recognize that all longing, I may project it onto money, I may project it onto Jamie, but all longing, all energy, we project it onto God, source,
mhm,
universe, whatever you want to call that. I may be projecting it in my outer world, but at the end of the day, and if
mhm,
you really go deep into yourself, you will recognize that sitting to meditate, yes, it helps calm the nervous system. It helps my mental clarity. It helps me, quote, get through the day with equanimity. But the deeper, yeah, and all of that is amazing.
yeah,
If
yeah.
that was the best you got, that's amazing. That is a
Right.
life well lived.
But it creates space also, doesn't it?
Yes. But underneath, there's also a tremendous opportunity
Mhm.
to heal.
Yeah.
And meditation is the healing technology, if there ever was one, because you're still with yourself. And often you're still with the pain of yourself.
Yeah.
So, in this chapter of life that I'm moving through a pain, a shedding, an unraveling of conditioning that I've been taught. And sometimes it's painful to sit in a meditation chair for 40 or 50 minutes. But because I've learned to be present with myself, and because I've learned that really the ultimate longing is a deeper communion, like I was saying earlier, what I really want, I'm calling it mothered, to be mothered. But
Mhm.
we all want that from this universe. We're all a child of this universe. We all want that. We all need that. We all want to feel what it feels like to walk through your journey on earth, whether you're doing the best you can to mother your children and you're a single mom or a single father, whether you're trying to decide what to do in your marriage or your relationships, whether you are moving through a physical diagnosis or illness or whatever your journey may look like. Ultimately, what you want is to walk through that journey knowing that you are being so held and mothered and fathered and held by a presence that has you, that you're not doing it alone, that you're not walking through alone. And we're all trying so hard, and we are searching to have that feeling. And when you have that, you have everything.
That's it right there, right? Because we look for security because we want to feel safe, and we're conditioned to look externally. And what I hear you saying is that through meditation, by the willingness to go deeper and in that stillness, all that is not unlike love bubbles up, and it's actually for us. So it's antithetical to what we've been conditioned to believe. But what I hear you saying is we actually lean into it, that whatever is in the way is actually the way.
Yeah.
And can we be present with that? And in that pain, in those tears, in that fear, in that anxiety, to be so fully present with it without judging it, but bringing love and compassion to that part of ourselves, we begin to learn how to soothe ourselves. And then underneath that is a message that, oh, it is safe, that life is for me.
Yeah. And you said it so succinctly. I wish I would have said it the
I
succinct.
got it from you, honey. It was just coming. That's what I, go ahead.
And basically, what I hear you saying is it reminded me of from the Course in Miracles everything is either love or a call for love.
Yes.
And that is as simple as it can be and as true as it can be. Everything is either love or a call for love. Everything that you are going through in your life right now, you're either connected to love or it's a calling for love. And so that is a simple way to say if you sit down to meditate and you feel that a lot of pain is coming up, it is a call for love. So if you sit down and everything is flowing, you are in the flow state of love. And if you sit down and pain emerges, it is a call for love. And so we learn to be the giver of love to ourselves as we are connecting with that greater presence of love. So I love the way that you're, I mean, that is a very succinct, it's a very succinct takeaway, right?
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
that you are experiencing in your life right now is either love or a call for love.
Well, and I'll tell you, your languaging of calling it a mothering
Mm-hmm.
of love, the
Mm-hmm.
softness and what that how that hits me when I learned that from you and began to actually practice that for all of you listening. This is not just a lovely conversation, which it is, but I
Mm-hmm.
want you to know my life has substantially shifted and changed because I took the time to be still with those parts of myself that I had judgment with, that I was afraid of, and brought that kind of mothering love and tenderness and gentleness and soothing and caring, and that is what has helped to transform those areas in my life, which created more space for a more authentic me to come present. that is what I've learned from you and from your courses. And
Mm.
so to hear you talk, and that's why the value of meditation, I was so interested in what the actual practice was and what it looked like. So your listeners, yeah, yes, we all hear about meditation, but what does it really look like? And it can look like a lot of different things, but it's like you were sharing about bringing an intention to it and then having these tools to actually sit with. When the stuff comes up, who wants to sit with that? But why does it come up? And oh, you're saying it is for us. I just another layer of being able to remove what's blocking love's presence that is inherent within us. So that was just, boy, this is a lot longer conversation, which we do. My gosh, we get together and off it goes. So
So true. So
yeah,
true.
well, thank you for that. And I hope everybody has some nice takeaways from your process and experience of meditation and what it's like and what your daily practice is.
Right. I think the takeaway I would love everyone to leave with is
Mm,
that meditation practice doesn't always look like we're zenned out on our mat. Sometimes
exactly.
it's a shedding process, it's a disintegration process, it's a death in a certain kind of a way. Sometimes it's a dark night of the soul. And certainly what I've described is sort of a hybrid. If you want to get very
Mm,
pure, a pure meditation practice is a Vipassana meditation practice. That is when you are simply sitting and you become aware of the breath going in your nostrils, down the back of your throat, and out. So in and out, when your mind wanders, you bring it back to the breath. That is a pure meditation practice. So what I'm describing is like a hybrid. Like you're saying, there are many, many, many different forms, and there's all sorts of benefits for all the different forms. But my takeaway that I hope everyone is receiving, because individuals come to me, clients, students, every
mm,
single day, and at the end of the day, what I find that is common to everyone is that we don't know how to be with the messy parts of ourselves and the painful parts of ourselves and the orphaned parts of ourselves in a loving way, in a way that promotes healing and transformation. So we're not just reliving that narrative, the same narrative that I was living in 6 years ago. And that freedom that comes from the ability to mother ourselves in this way is a freedom then that you bring into the rest of your life.
mm. 100%. Thank you. Thank you. I want to touch base on a couple of other topics. Since we're here to talk about you, so, one of the things that people struggle with or are curious about, it's romantic relationship and
Mhm.
love. So, what is your definition? What was it? What is it now in terms of being in relationship and loving someone? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I refer to this often is Gary
Mm,
Zukov from the book The Seat of the Soul. And he describes an intimate relationship as a relationship between two equal partners for the purpose of spiritual growth. So I'll say it again.
mm,
He describes intimate relationships as a relationship between two equal partners for the specific purpose of spiritual growth. So Jamie and I came together in spiritual partnership. So for us, the real marriage is our spiritual partnership. And yes, we have a piece of paper, but honestly, I know people say this, but honestly, it's not relevant to us. It's a spiritual partnership that we have. We are two equals and we are here for the purpose of spiritual growth, my growth, his growth. The things that I would say about this all is one of the biggest things that I've learned.
mm,
I can only speak for myself, but I do have the privilege of working with clients and hundreds of students and stuff is that what I've learned is the greatest marriage is the one to myself.
wow.
And I wish someone had said that to me before I got married. But they didn't, and that's okay because during the course of my marriage and during the course of my shedding and my disillusionment and dissolving of all my conditioning and becoming painfully aware of the way I was conditioned to think that this person was here he married me. He's here to fulfill some of my needs, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, socially, culturally, it's like, oh, they're here to complete me, and we buy into that, which is a setup for massive codependency. But please go on.
It's, and so what I learned, first of all, early on, I learned, and I always say the rings I wear, they're 3 rings,
Mm,
and the middle ring, it looks like a wedding ring, and no one else might know it, but for me, every time I look at it, it's the ring that I married myself.
oh, I didn't
So,
know that.
mhm.
Oh,
So
I
my
love
wedding
that.
rings, yeah, whenever I look at this, I
Mm,
happen to be going through this form right now with Jamie Lula, but
mhm,
when I look at my wedding ring, it's I'm married to myself. And that in intimate
mm,
relationship has been my deepest learning. It's been painful at times. It's
mhm,
been very
mhm,
painful at times, learned. And now I would say that I'm pretty much in a love affair with myself. And that's really important when you talk about marriage and intimate partnership,
mhm,
because when one becomes more committed to marrying yourself, then what happens is you must lessen the reins of what the form is going to look like or not look
mhm,
like. So we may stay together another year, we may stay together another decade, but what will remain consistent is that I am married to myself and I am interested in becoming the most authentic version of Suzi Lula, because when I'm making my transition, I will look back and I will see, well, how did you show up in this relationship?
mm, mhm.
Honestly, it has nothing to do with this other person giving to you. It's like, and of course there's that. So I don't want to be misleading, but of course
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
that. But really, it's how did I show up? And was I able to heal and transform and show up as the highest version of myself? So that's one learning, is that
Mm,
A, it's a spiritual partnership. B, I'm married to myself. And then lastly, I will say my marriage has been a series of marriages and divorces, marriages and divorces, marriages and divorces. And some of which Jamie knows about, some of
yeah,
which he
I
doesn't know
was just
about.
gonna ask.
He might not know that he's been married and divorced 7 times, but I call it my inner divorce. And I've gone through many inner divorces and I've had to
What does
let,
that look like, Susie?
yeah,
Just to those, yeah.
yeah. So, and I feel like I'm going through one right now and
Mm,
it's personal, and I'm not saying anything to you and everyone listening that I haven't said to Jamie, but I am going through one of these moments right now. We've been together for a really long time.
yeah.
So what does that look like? It looks like every so often checking in on myself and asking myself, how am I showing up? What might I be carrying from my past that I'm still projecting into this
Mm,
relationship?
mhm,
What is showing up here? What am I bringing in that has nothing to do with Jamie Lula?
mhm,
And so, just to come full circle to when you were asking about meditation and I was sharing about finance and insecurity, often I do project into my marriage. And I have come to know, when you're asking, what does that look like? I've just come to know deeply in my heart and feel that I want to be harmless in life.
mm,
And I can see the ways that sometimes through my still unhealed parts of me, that I'm doing the best I can, that I project. And so I can't help that part. That part is where I am on my journey. I'm humbled by it. But what I can do is be as harmless as I can to the other person. And so sometimes, because I had a challenging time when I was a little girl, holding in a state of abundance, even though I could see the possibilities in my family, I had a hard time holding in a consciousness of abundance while I was seeing lack all around me.
mm,
I can sometimes still be aware that in my current marriage, I have a hard time sometimes holding a state of abundance if Jamie is in a state of lack.
Mm.
And so, what I've learned is what I really want is to be harmless and not, to the best of my ability, not project onto him. So, I believe I don't do that too much anymore. That in itself is a journey. We could have 10 episodes on how to walk that bridge and that path. But I am aware that there is something that my soul is grappling with right now.
Mhm.
And I want deeply to know my own abundance in the midst of whatever is going on around me and whomever is around me. And that is my work right now, is how to be so knowing of who I am and the abundance that is within me, and to embody that so that I'm able to be the bringer of that rather than have it disturb my sense of who I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, all this coming back to intimate relationship is that it really is for the point of spiritual growth. I'm growing right now,
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel, you know, um, good. I don't
Yeah.
know. It
Yeah.
feels like what it feels like.
Right.
It certainly doesn't feel like the Cinderella story that I was
Right.
read to when
Right.
I was
Right.
6. That is
Right.
not what it feels like right now.
Mm. I
Uh,
think that's so important for people to hear and realize you've been on the path for 3 decades, totally immersed in the teachings and sharing and teaching and reading and studying. I mean, I just witnessed this, and still your humanity, that part of you, when you're saying it's about marrying and divorcing many times, then what I'm hearing you say is that in your humanity, you're divorcing that part of yourself in the marriage that no longer serves first and foremost you, right? And then
yeah,
that's what actually will abate or end the projection, because it will no longer reside within you.
exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow, Suze. I just got goosebumps all over. Thank you for that. I hope those who are listening were able to really embrace and hear how that process works, and that it's not easy, and that it's often painful and sad.
Yeah, and I think it does kind of come full circle to this idea of a spiritual practice and how to
Yeah.
process and be in the stillness with ourselves, because crazily, I would say to you, I also wouldn't trade it for the world because I'm growing and it
Gotcha.
doesn't feel real comfortable right now
Yeah.
by a long shot. But I am growing and I wouldn't trade that for anything. And Jamie is a catalyst for that. So I wouldn't trade
Yes.
that for anything.
Yes, that's right.
We're all in service to each other. We're all souls here in service to each other. And none of that is lost on me. And
Yeah.
while it doesn't feel good in the moment, and I know that I know that there is a dissolving right now of the old that's happening, that I
Yes.
have been conditioned into and have perpetrated into myself. I know that there's also a birth and a breakthrough happening as this dissolves, as this sheds, and this thing, that's where the meditation comes in.
Yes.
I wouldn't trade it, but there's been other chapters that felt easy breezier. Let's
Right.
just
Right.
this isn't necessarily an easy breezy chapter, and I wouldn't trade it for anything because we're on this earth for a nanosecond, and
Right.
just for a second. And so it's like, for me, it's bring it on, because if this is going to assist me to live more fully into who Suzi Lula came here to live as and to know who I am, okay, bring it
And
on.
that is why I fell in love with you right there.
Mm,
Your willingness, your openness, your devotion to yourself and to your practice to continue to grow, and to be able to see that even in the midst of such turmoil and pain and trials and tribulations, and we all have them, but there is something in that that's for you. And you live that.
Mm,
probably more than anyone else I know.
mm, thanks.
I've been privileged to witness you walking through your dark nights of the soul and your challenges. And then I see this, the butterfly, of course, image comes, right? That you break through the cocoon, right? You're in there, but you're in there, you're committed, you're devoted, and you're staying present. And then I've watched you blossom as you come out on the other side. And I know that's true. And I know that for you. And thank you for sharing that with me, with your listeners, with all of us. And
Yeah. So I appreciate that because, again, not sharing it just for everybody to be in my business of my relationship, but certainly if anyone else is going through a challenging time, may this in some way, shape, or form serve you. And as I said a few episodes ago, I did an episode on a different take on mental health.
mm,
And as I said, there's so many individuals out there, quote, suffering in silence. And
yes.
so if you are someone who's moving through a challenging time, be it with a partner, be it with a child, be it with your own body weight or an illness or finance or whatever it is, may this assist you in some way. Then if it can be of service, then it's time well spent.
Well, and speaking of time well spent, I think there's so many other things I wanted to talk about, but I think this is good. This is
Perfect.
perfect.
It's
Yeah.
just perfect.
You're welcome.
So, welcome back, Joe. Just not even 24 hours later. I really appreciate you jumping back on with me. So, just to fill everyone in, we recorded this episode yesterday. It was complete. And then this morning, I was having a conversation with Michael Bernard Beckwith, who is a dear friend of mine. I serve on the board of trustees at Agape International Spiritual Center with him, speak there, I teach there. So we're colleagues, we're dear friends. He's a teacher, mentor, friend, all the things. And I was having a conversation with him this morning about the topic that we were talking about yesterday. And I had some insights. And so I called you and I asked if you would be willing to jump back on today so that I could share the insights with both you and everyone listening, because a lot can happen in 24 hours.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. So when people know if they're processing and going through something, there's always going to be more because we're never really finished. That's the nature of evolution, and that's the nature of growing and being open and available, and new insights come along. And I love that you called me up and said, "Hey, let's do this. I gained some new insights here into what we were talking about yesterday." And that your enthusiasm to share that and willingness to share that, I thought was just wonderful, because for all of you out there listening, that's how it works. Yeah. New
That's how it
insights, new
works.
awarenesses. Yeah.
That's how it works. So I was in a particular place, which you all have now heard yesterday, and in less than 24 hours, more has been revealed to me.
Mm.
So I'll just jump right in, and then please feel free to interrupt me at any point and or ask questions. And we'll kind of unpack this together for everyone. So I was sharing with Michael Beckwith this morning on the phone. Basically, what I was sharing with you yesterday, I'm at a particular place in my own spiritual practice, my own life, where I will say grappling somewhat with this intentionality and seeking to live my life in a particular state of abundance consciousness, and how I find it often challenging for me to maintain that state of abundance consciousness when I'm walking side by side with individuals in life who may be in a lack consciousness, and how I'm very painfully aware that that is a reflection of my inability when I was a child to maintain an abundance consciousness, being raised in a family that the dynamic was one of lack.
Mm.
So I was sharing that with him this morning. And then I asked him this question because what I know of him, and I'm not sharing anything that he hasn't also shared publicly, so this is
Mhm.
in private, but what I know of him is that at different times in his life, and I'll speak as I know him from being on the board, in his professional life, there have been times when let's say at Agape, we were at a certain financial level. And because of that financial level, he chose not to get paid. And he chose to keep paying the other staff members what they were getting paid. And he would make choices like that. I also know, obviously, being the spiritual director and founder of a spiritual center and a global organization, he has certain financial areas that are on his shoulders that he carries and that kind of thing when you're running an organization. And so I asked him this morning if he would share with me what his inner experience is of having these financial obligations in his life. If that does that.
Yeah, clear.
And so he shared with me, he shared a lot, but the
Mm,
part that really spoke to me was he said the times that he is anchored and able to be in his own rootedness and centeredness and groundedness and his knowing of his own abundance
hmm
is when he's able to give thanks and have gratitude that he's even in a position to be that person for the organization or for other individuals in his life.
mm,
And there was something about him sharing that. And it even sounds to me, I want to say, duh, like it sounds so simplistic sharing it with everyone. But what it did for me in listening to him was it sent a message to me that in order for him to have gratitude and thanksgiving, that he's even in the position to be able to hold that space and make those offerings for other people, means that he's in anchored in the place of abundance already, because you can't give
100%.
thanks, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't give thanks when you're in the consciousness of lack.
right.
And immediately when he shared his own process with me, I felt in my body, oh, I am that too. In my own respective life, I am that in my own orbit. And it took me from a place of seeking to feel abundant and to experience abundance as if it was outside of me. It registered in me, I am that also. Oh, I see. Thank you. I am also in a space in my life. I must be abundant in
hmm
order to be that individual for other individuals in my life. And it moved me from a place of heaviness and weightedness into something that is light. And it moved me from a place of lack to a energy of abundance. And so the value of sharing with you, Joe, and
Mm.
all of you yesterday, because it was very vulnerable. And I absolutely asked after we finished recording, what the heck did I just do? And I had that, as Brene
The
Brown said,
words were different, but yes.
yeah, I had that moment of vulnerability hangover, as Brene Brown says.
Yeah,
But I had this sincere intention,
correct.
and the universe delivers the people, experiences, situations into my lap and my orbit that can fulfill upon my intention. And so, for everyone listening, just recognize that you might be going through something in this very moment. I had tears yesterday. It was vulnerable yesterday. I was transparent yesterday. I was in one state of consciousness less than 24 hours ago. And then these things line up for me from the universe and will be lining up for you in your life if you're listening. Look for them, expect them. And in less than 24 hours from now, you can expect to have been given something that will assist you to move from one state of consciousness to your next level of consciousness.
Beautiful. And that's exactly the process and how it works. I'll add one little thing. It's like the intention is so important because it helps us to focus and it helps the universe then to deliver the very thing that we're working on or working through. And for me, it's also, and let go of the form of what I think that help, how I think that help is going to show up. I'm going to be discernful, but at the same time, the universe can and does and will use any and everything for our growth. That's how much it loves us. That's how much it cares for us. That's how much it wants us to grow and to evolve into our highest state of being.
Yeah. I
Yes.
love so much what you're saying about the way you're describing the universe, and it's why I really love soul psychology. I
Yeah.
love the level of the soul. I love the level of what's happening in this larger universal presence. We are connected to something larger and greater than ourselves. And when we set a sincere intention and we turn ourselves over to be guided and directed, we open ourselves up to an infinite potentiality, as you are saying, that is for us. There is something in your life right now that is for you. It doesn't matter what you're going through. There is something that is guiding and directing you, and it is your own soul self. Your soul self is your own mothership, and it is connected to something greater and larger that is your mothership's mothership. And I believe now that we're unpacking it, oh, I literally feel inside of my consciousness the very thing that less than 24 hours ago I was saying that I was seeking. I feel it now. I'm anchored. So now moving forward, my practice will be to, and it's another reason I called you, and I wanted
Mm.
everyone to get to hear this, because now the practice actually begins. Because now I feel something inside of me. I want to memorize this inner sensation, this inner experience that I have. I am residing right now in an energy and in an atmosphere and in a consciousness of abundance. And now my practice begins of anchoring myself into this experience of abundance. So from this moment forward, my work is to anchor myself into this state of abundance, that it becomes so familiar to me that this is, you know, that saying, this is now my old ceiling is now my new floor.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yesterday, this would have
Mhm.
been a ceiling experience. And now this quote ceiling experience is now my new floor. And so
Your
now
new
I anchor
foundation
this.
on which you're building your life moving
I've
up,
spiraled up now.
spiral up. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I call it the spiral of transformation. Now I'm experiencing something. I've experienced abundance before. Obviously, we all have experienced that which we are seeking. It's within us. But I'm now experiencing it at an elevated state of consciousness. I've spiraled up, and now my practice becomes anchor this where I am so that I continue to spiral up.
Okay, so
Bye, hi.
before you sign off, let's go back one more time, what it was that you got in that conversation this morning.
Yesterday, when you and I were speaking, I was sharing that I was deeply seeking to have the experience of inner abundance, even if and especially when others in my life may be in a lack consciousness. That's what I was seeking. And so today, what I'm embodying is through this conversation, I'm experiencing my own inner state of abundance through this seemingly simple comment that Michael Beckwith said to me, that he feels grateful that he's even in a position to offer abundance to others who might not be in that position. What that did for me is it gave me an access point to the very thing that I was seeking. I was searching inside of myself like a GPS. I was searching for to land in the place of abundance inside of myself, and I was missing it. I was just missing it. And it's so interesting you ask that again, because my experience now in hindsight of looking back at my mom
Mm.
is that my mom was a very abundant woman, like extremely abundant. My mom and my dad were very self-made. They did really well for themselves coming from where they came from. And yet and still, my mom didn't take ownership of her abundance consciousness. She did really well for herself, but she always saw herself still in lack. And so in my own life, I'm aware that one could look, and many can look and see, oh, she's clearly abundant. But even in my abundant state, inside of myself, I don't often have that inner experience of, yes, I am abundant. I have carried on that generational pattern of still seeing myself in lack. And I think, for me, what I'm aware of is I'm aware of the ways that I can sometimes hold myself
Yeah,
in the same way that my mom was probably holding herself.
absolutely.
And so what it has done is, in the past, it's robbed me
Mm,
of the inner feeling of abundance, just like it robbed my mom of the inner feeling and consciousness of abundance.
mhm.
And so what Michael gave me today was an access point. It's
Right.
like an open door to say, oh, I must be abundant if I can offer this abundance to others.
Right. And to express it with gratitude and appreciation, right?
Yes, but it gave me this access point of, I must be that thing.
Mm,
I must be that thing in order to offer it to someone else. And that was the piece for me that was missing. And
absolutely. And
it,
then you're offering from an overflow as opposed to lack.
yeah, I accessed it now. And for me, that's the golden part. Less than 24 hours later, I'm having that inner experience. It's fulfilled unto me.
So
If that
beautiful.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you for jumping back on and wanting to add this second part. I think it's so important, especially for the listeners out there, again, to know that we're always in process and there's always another layer.
I also thank you
Mm.
for being an individual in my life that I can call up and say, let's complete this. And to all of you listening, I do sincerely, from the depths of my heart and being, wish for you that this insight that I'm moving through will be of high service to you. And
Mm.
if it
Yeah.
is, I sincerely hope, please leave a comment, DM me, or leave a 5-star review, because the reason we're doing this is so that you can thrive, your life will be enriched, you can transform, you can evolve. And if that's happening in your world, then this has been well served.
Beautifully said, sweetheart. Yeah.
So thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
So much love to you. And
You
thank you,
too.
everyone, for listening. So much love to all of you, and see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.